going 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome to Cultivated Live for today, which is Wednesday, May 14th. I am Jay Rosenthal. That's Jeremy Burke. We are co-founders of Cultivated Media. I'm managing director. Jeremy is the editor-in-chief. And you, Billy Goldsmith in the middle, are the co-founder of Rebel Rabbit. We can't wait to dive in. But before we do that, you, I think, are our first guest we've had, not even from South Carolina, but definitely in South Carolina as we speak. So nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeremy and Jay. It's great to meet y'all, and looking forward to our conversation today. Yeah, the Deep South and the Bible Belt is definitely an interesting place to try to push THC.
Well, you got the word THC and y'all in one and in the first minute of the conversation. Let's start there actually, because obviously you're in South Carolina. Talk about sort of Rebel Rabbit, its origins. I read a little bit on your website. It's a very compelling story and well written on the website. Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the original origin story goes back to me and my business partner, Pierce Wiley. We were at a buddy's birthday party, and I was abstaining from alcohol at the time. I wasn't drinking. This is kind of when I was entering my recovery, and we can jump into that later in the conversation. But we were at a brewery. It was a buddy's birthday party. This was April, I think it was like 2019. So those, right after the Farm Bill had kind of hit, and I was flirting around with hemp at the time, but I wasn't drinking. And we were at this birthday party, and I was getting all the questions. Why aren't you drinking? Can I get you a drink? Are you okay? Like, people were almost like mind blown that I was not consuming alcohol, but I was at this brewery attending this event where everyone was, having a good time, putting them down and partying. I did have a vape in my pocket, and that was kind of frowned upon to be, lurking around, sucking on the vape. And that was really the light bulb moment for me and Pierce of like, what if you could consume this in a different way? Like, what if you could put this in a beverage and make it social? Because that's when it really hit me. It was like, okay, I want to be a part of this. This isn't accepted. How can I make this acceptable? And that was the true light bulb moment. And we kind of hit the ground running from there, looking into different water soluble cannabinoids. I have a background in brewing and distilling, so I was able to get a pretty good start on some R&D and formulation models. And we launched the product in December of 2021. So a little about year and a half, 2 years of hitting the ground till products were in shelves.
It's a pretty good sprint.
Yeah, it was a quick sprint. We had COVID happening right there. Our canning line was delayed. It was stuck on a barge out in sea. So we were waiting on that to get delivered. And so, just hurdle after hurdle trying to get the product launched. And, we were one of the first to enter the space back in 2021 behind a few other brands.
So Billy, you're in South Carolina, as we talked about on the top. What is it like operating a hemp brand in the South right now? I mean, we talked to a lot of people in New York and Colorado and California. And tell us a little bit about South Carolina and what, both the social dynamics are and the market dynamics are.
Yeah, at first people thought we were absolutely crazy, like insane. They were like, "There's no way this can be legal, and you're crazy if you think I'm going to buy it from you and put it in my store." So at first it was like trying to run through a brick wall. People wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. Between insurance, questions about legality, questions about how's they going to intoxicate my consumer, so on and so forth. That was really tricky. But that's when you started to kind of see a lot of other products. Gummies were floating around. You started to see these hemp-derived cannabinoids really kind of take off, and that helped bring it to light. And I can give my business partner Pierce a lot of credit to this, but he's done a lot of state lobbying with our local legislation and stuff to get some favorable hemp laws here for us. But it's been kind of slow pulling. That's what we're focusing on right now is our backyard, is to kind of dig deeper and not wider like we did last year. But it's been tough plowing for sure. We're in the Bible Belt. You really have reefer madness down here still. Right. A lot of these older Southern conservatives who are kind of running the show around here, they'll let you have your bourbon and your whiskey and all that, but you don't touch the camp. You don't smoke the reefer. So that has been a challenge, but people are slowly becoming more open-minded to it. And as we're seeing our target audience grow, I think that's also showing some of the lawmakers that this is a legitimate thing that not just young kids are going after to get stoned or high off of.
Can you actually talk about that? Because you're talking about going deep and wide at the same time, but going deep. Talk about that target market, like where it started. I guess not only geographically but psychographically, like who's actually initially buying the product and now buying the product, and has that grown? And I guess has stigma dived down? Like, what does that
Yeah.
look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first branded, we were pretty loud. We are still pretty loud brand. If you look at it, it's kind of aggressive, kind of masculine. Where most of these other brands are kind of catering to the feminine and kind of a softer touch. So we really leaned into the to that heavier masculine feel, and we got kind of tons of traction right off the bat. And we were in states all over the place, from Ohio, New York, New Jersey, and we were having a hard time getting penetration. Yeah, we were in those states, we were moving product, but we really wanted to kind of reel back in and focus on our geographical area. And what we really saw right off the bat, and that's kind of why we went with that branding, was we thought that was going to be young people, young kids, 20 to 30, that were wanting to get high and party. And that turned out not to be the case. You know, we saw baby boomers, soccer moms, a lot of the older age demographic get into it, kind of replace their weekday wine or their afternoon beer. Some people still consume some alcohol with it and end their night with one of these. So the target audience, we initially thought that it was going to be that younger crowd who just wanted to get high, but in a beverage form. They're out there for sure, but I think they're looking for higher dose products. But we are really seeing kind of that older demographic pick up the product, and that's where I'm seeing it shift, especially in these low dose models.
Can you talk about the process finding your way to the right market segment? Because, you know, in the hemp cannabis industry, there's just not a lot of data to go off of. So I imagine there's a lot of trial and error there.
Yeah, right. So as far as the data and all that goes, finding the right target market, that kind of really goes in. We invest heavy into our marketing and data. Marketing and our website, and just trying different ads and creative. So we're always trying different creative ads. We do a lot of our own content. We do a lot of in-house content. So we're trying to kind of share the founder story and trying to open up the hood, if you will, and learn more about our audience. So we're still pulling data, still trying to find out who that audience is. I personally think if you're 21 and up, there's a use case for you. Whether you want to have a high dose hemp-derived beverage at night to go to sleep, if you want a low dose one while you're out partying, whatever the case may be. If you're a soccer mom who wants to not drink wine during the night because you got to take the kids to practice, or you got a young professional that has to get up early in the morning and be ready for work. That's my personal opinion, is if you're over 21, there can be a use for you, but we're still gathering that data on who's the real target.
I was just on the Rebel Rabbit website and find a retailer. Like, this goes to the point we were talking about right before we came on, that sort of hemp-derived products play on one field, and cannabis products in a state-regulated marketplace certainly on another. And even as you zoom in, South Carolina, for example, like there's 710 retailers, right, where you can find Rebel Rabbit products. Like, that makes cannabis in the regulated market in like a state like Massachusetts, their head explode. One, because the number is so big. Two, because they're playing on a different playing field. How do you go at that conversation? I would say almost especially now that you see some of those folks that are operating in state regulated cannabis markets enter your space, I would say, as competitors. Like, how has that argument shifted, and how are you finding it now from the folks that many in our audience that are going to give you the
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we call it red state weed. We call it red state weed. I think it's a very symbiotic relationship. I know they probably look at the hemp market and they're like, okay, they didn't have to pay these $1 million licensing fees, wait 2 years to get their licenses approved and all this. So I'm sure they are very bitter, but the hemp-derived market is also opening up a massive segment of THC users that's not going to go to a dispensary, that doesn't live in a regulated state already, who doesn't have access to these products. So this is the only way they're going to be able to try it. So this could be a pathway to someone saying, oh, wow, I actually really like that. I'm going to explore cannabis more. And then that could bring them into a dispensary. Or if they're not in a regulated state, or excuse me, if they are in a regulated state, from the data we've looked at, some of these older demographics and older people, they don't really want to go into a dispensary. It feels a little taboo. They're kind of walking out looking around like they did something wrong. So if this gives a pathway to them to try cannabis products and find out, hey, I actually do like this and want to explore it more, it'll shift to the regulated market as their tolerance grows, and they find out, okay, well, that's what a beverage like. Well, I wonder what like a gummy's like, or maybe I can try a vape, or maybe a tincture. There's tons of different form factors and consumption methods out there that's not just limited to hemp beverages. So I know that it's contentious. We see a lot of them jumping over. There could be space for us in the regulated market down the road. I don't know. It could be a vice versa thing.
It's interesting you say that, because we've been talking over time, past several years, to folks in Minnesota on a very similar message that you just said, right? Hemp-derived products on sort of shelves everywhere, or even in breweries in Minnesota. Like, that is a gateway, terrible term, but a way for people to experience THC in a format that is in their daily lives. Maybe then they will become adult use recreational consumers in the sort of the market that they're setting up in Minnesota. But it is this sort of entry point, and it's accessible in many more places through normal channels rather than going to a dispensary, which can be burdensome. I mean, I'm from Massachusetts. Going to a dispensary in Massachusetts feels like you're doing something wrong. Any place they check your ID and a breezeway before you get in, it feels like you're doing something wrong.
It feels like prison to me, but and the beverage lends a great form to that too. You hear the buzzword nanotechnology and all that, but that rapid onset of THC is going to give the user a pleasant, consistent experience that they might not get at a higher dose if they go straight to the dispensary and get a live rosin gummy and down the hatch and have a rough one. So this is a nice way to dip your toe in without getting too wet.
Yeah. Can I actually ask you a question, a processing question? You said you had a brewing background. Like, how much trial and error was there in sort of shifting from brewing beer, I imagine, to creating sort of THC beverages? Like, is it an entirely different thing, or is it really about flavor profile and the end product, and then sort of tweaking around the edges?
It is a completely different thing. We're not dealing with grains. We're not dealing with mash. We're not doing starch to sugar conversions. We're not doing fermentations. We're not dealing with alpha and beta acids. So like all that is removed. We're essentially mixing ingredients in a certain order, homogenizing them, pasteurizing them, carbonating them, and then packaging them. So it's very different, but you do need to know how to work this equipment and in what order things need to go in. So I was able to take that knowledge and kind of downgrade it, if you will, believe it or not, and then apply, take all the science out of brewing and fermentation and alcohol conversion out, and kind of implement the blending and consistent homogenization of emulsion into these beverages. But yeah, to answer your question, there's tons of different profiles and like R&D that goes into it. We play around with on the small scale, and then we'll scale up usually to about 5 gallons until we're consistent with that, until we're committed to the full tank.
Well, there's a picture of your full tank. There's a picture of your full tank on your LinkedIn profile if anybody wants to see it. Well, at least that's what you're standing.
They have wrestlers on them, Ninja Turtles on them. They're fun.
I was just gonna ask, like, how consistent is the supply chain batch to batch? Like, I imagine that you get a lot of disruptions. Like, it's a brand new sort of emerging industry. Like, how do you control for that? Have you dealt with surprises as that comes?
Yeah, so obviously lots of pivots, like I'm sure brands are used to, but there are fortunately a lot of suppliers out there. If one vendor doesn't have the cans we need, there's usually 2 or 3 more. It's not always the best circumstance. Right now we have a great contract with the can supplier, kind of guarantees us a quick lead time, no MOQs. But if they're jammed up, we're gonna have to go somewhere else that we might not get that lead time. And as we're building out production schedules and stuff like that, we need to make sure all this stuff is lining up. So really just having a vast network of suppliers and being able to pivot and saying, all right, well, they can't print our cans for 6 weeks, but this guy can get us labels, and we can get blank cans and get labeled cans out the door in 2. So we can make that happen. And as y'all know, states are all over the place right now. So we're in a few states that are state specific. So, we'll either get custom printed cans for that state. We're in Iowa where they have a 4 milligram cap. Well, we do 5, 10, and 20, but I created a 4 milligram just to enter the state of Iowa. Right. Same with Kentucky. They have different label requirements. So we'll spin off adhesive labels for like kind of one-offs like those, just to see if we get any traction there, if we're committing to a large run of that SKU.
Yeah,
I love it. I love the entrepreneurial journey from that night.
It's scrappy. It's very scrappy.
It's scrappy, but for us, like Jeremy and I are scrappy, but we have a news.
Right.
we're doing stuff online. You're scrappy. You're like building a facility, create, supply chains, testing new markets. Like even testing a new market must have a major sort of investment from your perspective.
Oh yeah, it's very expensive to enter and then staff up, do a market blitz, and then see if that area needs to be supported with a rep. Now you're at that salary on there, so you're committing a lot to enter a new market. So you need to do that research and make sure you're ready to commit to do it, because it'll end up either costing you a lot of money or losing you a lot of money.
On the marketing side, I mean, I think my phone might have been listening to me or spying on me, but I got an ad for Rebel Rabbit last night on Instagram. Can you talk about social media marketing in the hemp space? Like, it seems like there's a little bit of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, this is what we are. You can't be too overt about it.
Yeah.
How do you use that channel, and have you found it effective?
Yeah, so we actually invest heavy into Meta. We have a good bit of spend with them that we do, but they are very picky. Obviously, you can't have leaves on there. The THC can't be out on there. So there's a lot of scrubbing that goes on, obviously, on the graphic and whatnot before it gets posted. And then also our in-house content creator, when he's getting content, he's also making sure he's at the right angle. That's not showing this, or this isn't in it. So a lot of kind of just back checking, a lot of back checking. We pay Meta to kind of help with our website to make sure there's nothing on there that's going to get us banned, flagged going forward. So a lot of trial and error, and we're actually still doing trial and error. I think for the direct consumer market and e-com, especially with social media, whether that be LinkedIn, or actually not LinkedIn, LinkedIn's wide open, but whether that be social, Instagram, TikTok, stuff like that, it's still trial and error for us. Some brands have done better at it, but we're still trying to find that sweet spot of what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what pulls the most traffic to our website and to our stores.
Yeah, I get ads I live in Canada, but I'm getting ads for magic mushrooms through my Instagram account right now. That's how
I wish I got ads for magic mushrooms.
Yeah. Delivery in 15 minutes. That's pretty compelling ad, actually.
Go low and slow with that, Jay, I would say.
Yeah, no, it's a small order.
As long as the prices aren't through the roof,
No, it's pretty easy to. I mean, that's easy to get anyway. But it is interesting to sort of see, well, the parallels, like we just said about marketing, similar parallels, I think, in the cannabis industry, even though many of them, won't market or don't market, but they keep trying to push the envelope and see what works. It's just, I mean, I would say there's a little more freedom for you in that there's not a license to lose, right? Like you can push the boundaries, you might get dinged by Meta, but you're not going to get dinged by the Office of Cannabis Management in New York. And
right. Technically we're still unregulated, right. So we're kind of just flying with it.
And maybe we'll end on that because we're coming up on time. Like, thinking about that, technically you're unregulated. There is on the horizon, I guess, at some point, a new farm bill. This is going to be part and parcel of it, how hemp is dealt with, or hemp-derived products are dealt with. Talk about, I don't know if that's the regulatory risk or like how you think about what is coming next, because something is coming, I'd imagine, right? Either state by state hemp-derived regulations or something at the federal level. Like, how do you prepare for that? Or is it not, there's nothing to prepare for, it is what it is?
We try to do everything we can to make the legislators happy now, knowing that this bill is coming up. So like the THC we use, for instance, we use a full spectrum mother liquor THC. So we're pulling all the cannabinoids out of that. When we first started dealing with the state and our facility, they were like, okay, you're isolating Delta-9 THC from the hemp plant. Hemp's legal, meaning hemp and all of its components. So they want to see full spectrum profiles on those COAs. So we went ahead and committed. Yeah, it's not exactly cheap, but we're committed to full spectrum extracts going into our drinks. So the state loves that because they can see all those cannabinoids that was originally in that plant. It doesn't look like we took this plant, isolated just the one that gets you high, put it in this drink. That's what they don't like. So we're doing stuff like that. Obviously, talking with some of these bigger distributors, some of the bigger beer guys that have a little pool, kind of getting with them, getting that ball rolling. We're with two major distributors in the state, one in the upstate, one on the coast. So, working with them heavy, at least in the state of South Carolina. And fingers crossed for the 2025 Farm Bill that'll come up at the end of the year. The 2018 Farm Bill was an agricultural bill that was for the farmers. I actually grew hemp. That's how I got into this in 2018. I was one of the first in South Carolina to get my license, and I grew a few acres of hemp. And this was kind of before you saw any of the psychoactive cannabinoids, and there's not much ROI on it. So I think just, ramping up, getting ready for hopefully maybe 3-tier system talk and all this federal lobbying that's going on. But yeah, kind of making sure you're checking the boxes on quality and QC from a facility standpoint, making sure you're using the proper extraction and cannabinoid profile that the state and hopefully the country wants to see here soon. So kind of checking all those boxes and making sure they're happy with what we're doing now, knowing changes are coming. We can kind of be acclimated to those changes or ready to pivot if we need to.
Oh, makes good sense. Well, go ahead, Jared.
No, that's it. It's just super interesting. I mean, Jay and I can relate a little bit. Like, we have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs, and hearing about the journey is super, super exciting. So more power to you. And we'll check in 6 months and see where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that'd be great.
Thanks, Billy. Great to meet you. Great to hear about Rebel Rabbit. We'll connect with you soon.
Likewise, fellas. Y'all have a good one.
You too.